Those of us who were weaned on pro wrestling know how important drama is in the industry. We don't know about you, but we remember it was the feuds that we enjoyed the most. Speaking of, if there's one tag team that gave their most in terms of drama, it was the Hardy Boys. Well, we'd love to see the duo in action again. Some fans want them to hang up their gloves permanently. Here's why. First things first, Matt's Inside the Rope interview. For those of you who might not have been keeping up with the wrestling world of late, you might know that Matt Hardy debuted in AEW in 2020. His brother Jeff, on the other hand, followed suit in early 2022. But just when we thought we were going to have a proper Hardy Boys reunion, things went south. Jeff Hardy was arrested for a DUI in June. Since Jeff is dealing with the legal fallout of his actions, Matt might not be able to fulfill his wish of ending his amazing career with his brother at his side. While he was on Inside the Ropes, a weekly podcast covering current and past professional wrestling, the wrestler opened up about this. He explained that since they came in as the Hardy Boys, it's also how they'd like to go out. Not just that, he has hopes of doing everything in the AEW together as well. On top of that, he expressed some of the frustrations he's endured in recent years. For instance, how he had to debut during the COVID pandemic. What's more, he spoke about how until Jeff rejoins him in the AEW, he's trying to keep busy by being involved in a story on programming. From what we've gathered, he's doing it with Private Party. Coming up, fans' reactions. Agree or disagree, the pro wrestling fanbase isn't exactly the kindest one out there, so it's no surprise that most of their reactions to Matt's comments were cynical, although there were a few considerate ones where fans begged Matt not to drag his brother back to the same lifestyle that's killing him. Most of them called for the wrestlers to retire. One user, for example, joked that they should be paid until the end of their deals to stay at home. Another similarly, and rather callously, said that where Jeff can't remain sober and Matt is irrelevant, they can both barely move. But hey, as we explained before, some of the fans were genuinely concerned for the brothers' health. A user called Hypersonic Pika expressed, for instance, how much they love the two and as a result want them to quit the industry. Finally, there were a few suggestions as well. Basically, fans want them to transition to roles outside of the ring, like producers or agents. Well, it appears that some of the fans got their wish. Moving on, Matt comes out with disappointing news. Come the 30th of December 2022, Matt made a few disappointing revelations. Those of you who tune into his popular podcast, The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, might know that he came clean about how much of a tumultuous year his brother had had. Simply put, while answering the co-host John Alba's questions, Matt explained that if it wasn't for the unfortunate turn of events, people would have seen a Hardy Boys reunion in AEW. He explained how the two had several things planned for the summer that Jeff got his DUI. He also opened up about the detour he's had to take since the situation with his brother, but he ended the discussion on a positive note by suggesting that when you're a pro wrestler, you've got to adapt, and that's exactly what he's been trying to do. Unlike his previous interview, the reactions to this one weren't so callous. One Harry LFC16, if memory serves, tweeted how Jeff was his favorite wrestler growing up, and that he's seen enough of his matches to last him a lifetime, as a result of which it's right for him to ride off into the sunset and look after himself. So yeah, maybe there's still a few pro wrestling fans with their heads screwed on the right way. Let's also talk about their debut. Now that we've given you the scoop on their AEW situation, let's leap back into their careers. Since they span several years, we're mostly going to focus on the feuds and reunions. But first, let's revisit their debut. Now, if you're a Hardy Boys fan, then you might already know that it all began with a wrestling organization called Omega that they started with their friends as teenagers. Fun fact, the WWE star Shannon Moore was also a part of it. Anywho, what ended up happening was that Matt started pitching the organization to local promoters and then was eventually noticed by the right people. This is when they were first hired as jobbers. That's people who are meant to lose to make their opponents look good, just by the way. Coming back to the point, since they showcased a lot of athleticism during this period, the WWE gave them full-time contracts in 1998. Not just that, they were also sent to train with none other than Dory Funk Jr. at his Funking Dojo in Stamford, Connecticut. Not to mention the time they won their first tag team championship. Somewhere in 1999, the boys repackaged themselves and started an unorthodox, cruiserweight, high-flying, risk-taking style. This made them quite popular. What's more, after adding Michael P.S. Hayes as a manager, they transformed into serious tag team championship contenders. As a result, as many of you might know, the Hardy Boys won their first tag team championships from the Acolytes, Bradshaw and Farouk. For those those of you who don't remember, this happened on June 29, 1999 on Monday Night Raw, which aired, if we're not wrong, July 5th. They lost the title 26 days later, but since it was the first of their many successes, we needed to discuss this. Let's also look into their first split. Since this happened all the way back in 2001, here's a little refresher. At the Survivor Series, the brothers lost a tag team title unification to the Dudley Boys, because if memory serves, Jeff tried to swanton bomb Devon Dudley through a table. Emphasis on tried. The Hardys reunited a month later at the Royal Rumble and continued taking on all comers in the tag team division. Because while you might have forgotten, we remember that Devon moved out of the way and it was Jeff that crashed through the table. For this reason, Matt got mad at his brother and challenged him to a match at Vengeance. In fact, now that we think about it, Lita, aka Amy Christina Dumas, who was part of the Team Extreme, also got caught in the fire and ended up breaking her neck. Yikes. The brothers luckily were able to reconcile their differences a month later at the Royal Rumble and continued taking on all comers in the tag team division. Besides, Jeff is released from his contract. As die-hard fans of the boys might recall, on April 22, 2003, Jeff was released from his contract. You guys might also remember that it was due to several reasons, of which drug abuse, erratic behavior, and refusal to go to rehab were just a few. Besides, Jeff was quite tired of his hectic schedule as well, and had stopped turning up to important events. Up next, the reunion on ECW on Sci-Fi. In 2006, 3 years after Jeff's comeback, the brothers collaborated to take on the Full-Blooded Italians. There's no chance you don't vividly remember this because WWE made it a big moment and put it on an episode of ECW on Sci-Fi. Anyway, it was at this point that their tag team was revived and they went on to compete in matches against MNM. As a matter of fact, it was the same year that the brothers inadvertently and legitimately injured Joey Mercury's face, in turn starting an intense feud between the two teams. Moving on, they win the tag titles for the last time. For viewers whose memory isn't what it used to be, in 2007 at WrestleMania 23, Jeff and Matt Hardy competed in the annual Money in the Bank ladder match. During this match, as many of you might know, did the biggest spot of the match. Briefly, while Matt held Edge on a ladder suspended between the ringside barrier and the ring, Jeff climbed a large ladder and jumped off, dropping his leg onto Edge and putting both men through the ladder. This was the first time, interestingly enough, that fans had seen someone go through the ladder. And no, it didn't end there. The very next day, the duo was put into a 10-team battle royale. Yes, newer fans, there used to be 10 teams in pro wrestling back in the day. Ah, the good old days. Anywho, and coming back to the point, they won after finally eliminating Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch. Any guesses what happened next? Yep, you guessed it, it gave way to a feud that lasted 2 months. Let's also look into the beginning of the Hardy Boys feud. Speaking of, in 2009, seeing that his brother had turned into an Intercontinental Champion while he was still struggling to regain his ECW Championship, Matt turned on Jeff. And take a guess how he expressed his frustrations. Yep, with a steel chair. Not just that, he also went on to reveal that it was him who had burned down his house, attempted a hit and run, and orchestrated the pyro incident on his brother. Now, Jeff, as far as we can recall, was reluctant to fight his brother, but that changed when Matt made a comment about his dead dog. In light of these events, the brothers competed against each other in WrestleMania 15, where Matt ended up the winner twice. He also broke his hand because Jeff jumped on him and put him through a table in one of the fights. But hey, we've all been there with our siblings, haven't we? Last but not the least, their TNA reunion. In case you were thinking Jeff is the only one with a record for getting released from his contracts, think again. In 2011, TNA let go of Matt after he was arrested for being in possession of a huge amount of drugs. Rumor has it that he did this to get the heat off his brother, who had been arrested for a DUI earlier. It's interesting to think about because while the two have feuded a lot, there's no denying that they love each other very much. That's a wrap for this video. Should the boys call it a day? What's your favorite memory of the duo? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.